Have you ever wondered why, with all their power and adoration, couldn't they conquer their own demons? We're peeling back the golden curtain on 14 of Hollywood's most tragic queens. We reveal the hidden truths behind glamour, exposing how the very machine that crowned these women as goddesses also scripted their destruction. Join us as we uncover the captivating, tragic journeys of iconic actresses, stories as unforgettable as the legends themselves. Jean Harlow. Let's talk about Jean Harlow, the original blonde bombshell, the woman whose hair lit up the screen and started a national craze. If you lived in the 1930s, you couldn't escape her image. Radiant, witty, deliciously irreverent. She was a symbol of modern womanhood, bold and brash. Yet the real Jean was far more complicated and heartbreakingly fragile. Born Harlan Carpenter in Kansas City, Jean was pushed into the spotlight by a mother whose own Hollywood dreams had stalled. At 16, already married and divorced, she found herself in Los Angeles, where her ethereal beauty caught the eye of Howard Hughes. Her breakthrough in Hell's Angels established her as cinema's first platinum blonde goddess. Studios remade her from head to toe. Her famous platinum hair was achieved by a cocktail of ammonia, bleach, and peroxide, a weekly torture that ate away at her scalp. But it was more than her hair that was transformed. Harlow's sexuality was crafted for public consumption, yet her private life was haunted by tragedy. A husband's suicide, affairs splashed across tabloids, and a domineering mother who controlled her every move. MGM marketed her as a sex symbol, but Jean yearned to be taken seriously. She worked tirelessly, appearing in 6 films in 1932 alone. Critics praised her comic timing in classics like Dinner at 8 and Red Dust, where she held her own against the era's greatest actors. Yet her personal life remained turbulent. Her marriage to cinematographer Harold Rawson lasted just 8 months, while her relationship with William Powell never reached the altar she desperately desired. At the height of her fame, Jean looked like she had it all: money, adoration, a string of hit films. But behind the studio gates, her health was failing. No amount of stardom could shield her from the pain, physical and emotional, of a life lived in service to other people's fantasies. By 26, she was gone. Kidney failure, likely exacerbated by years of chemical treatments and relentless stress, cut her story short. Why couldn't all that fame save her? Because in Hollywood, success is a mask, and no mask, no matter how beautiful, can protect you from the truth inside. Jean's story is a reminder. Sometimes, the brightest lights burn out fastest, and behind every screen, goddess is a woman simply longing to be loved for who she really is. Judy Garland. Step into Judy Garland's ruby slippers, just for a moment. The world saw Dorothy, wide-eyed, hopeful, singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, with a voice so pure it seemed like a miracle. But for Judy, Hollywood was less Oz and more haunted castle, one where every wish came with a hidden cost. Born Frances Gumm, Judy was on stage before she could read, managed by a mother so relentless she was known as the real Wicked Witch. When the Gumm sisters performed, little Frances was always pushed to the front, her voice too powerful to ignore, her spirit too bright to contain. MGM signed her at 13 and quickly set about turning her into America's sweetheart, the girl next door with a 1,000-watt smile. What they didn't tell you was what went on behind the curtain: daily weigh-ins, endless diets, and a pharmacy's worth of pills just to keep her awake, asleep, or calm. Studio executives called her Little Hunchback for her slouching posture and bound her developing breasts to maintain her childlike appearance. She worked 18-hour days, sleeping only with the help of studio-provided barbiturates, then waking to amphetamines. By 17, she was a full-fledged addict, manufactured by the very industry that claimed to adore her. Her triumphant role in The Wizard of Oz came with a personal cost. She would spend the rest of her life chasing the approval she felt in that moment of glory. Judy's pain was the industry's dirty secret. Her desperate search for love, her struggles with addiction, her failed marriages, all played out in the public eye, while studio bosses made millions off her suffering. When her career stumbled, the studios turned their backs, leaving Judy to perform in nightclubs just to keep the lights on and her children fed. She made spectacular comebacks in A Star Is Born and her legendary Carnegie Hall concert. But each triumph was followed by a new betrayal or breakdown. You might wonder, with all that adulation, why couldn't she just walk away? Because Hollywood never lets go of its goddesses, not until it's done with them. Judy was trapped by the very magic she helped create. And in the end, all the applause in the world couldn't drown out the loneliness. When she died at 47 of an accidental overdose, the tragedy wasn't that she died young. It was that she'd been dying, piece by piece, since childhood. Judy Garland's tragedy is Hollywood's tragedy, a story of beauty, talent, and longing that could move a nation but could never quite save the woman herself. Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth, Hollywood's love goddess, immortalized with a single toss of her auburn hair in Gilda. But what do you really know about the woman behind the legend? Her real name was Margarita Carmen Cancino, the daughter of a Spanish dancer and a Ziegfeld girl. Before she became a movie queen, she was a little girl performing with her father in smoky border town nightclubs. Learning early that love could hurt, that applause was no substitute for safety, Hollywood transformed her. Studio bosses raised her hairline with excruciating electrolysis, dyed her hair red, gave her a new name and a new identity. Columbia Pictures. Chief Harry Cohn controlled every aspect of her career and coveted her personally, creating a prison of success around the shy young woman. Her image became so ubiquitous that it was even painted on the atomic bomb dropped on Bikini Atoll, a bizarre testament to her status as America's ultimate fantasy woman. She became the embodiment of desire, yet the closer she came to perfection, the further she slipped from herself. Rita was shy, gentle, and wounded, haunted by a childhood marked by her father's exploitation and abuse. Her marriages became headline fodder, especially her union with Orson Welles, whom she deeply loved, but who saw her more as a beautiful idea than a complex woman. Later came the disastrous marriage to Prince Ali Khan, which gave her a princess title, but little happiness. She once famously said, "Men go to bed with Gilda, but wake up with me," encapsulating her lifelong struggle to reconcile her public image with her private reality. She seemed to have it all: blockbuster films, magazine covers, a marriage to a real prince. But no crown could keep the darkness at bay. Failed relationships, struggles with alcoholism, and the slow devastation of undiagnosed Alzheimer's left her isolated and bewildered. In her final years, she barely recognized her own face in the mirror, let alone the legend Hollywood had built around her. Why couldn't Rita, adored by millions, find happiness? Because the studio machine that created her never let her heal, never allowed her to belong to herself. Her tragedy isn't just a cautionary tale. It's a warning. You can transform a woman into a goddess, but you can't erase her scars. In the end, Rita Hayworth was famous for being loved, but lived most of her life searching for love she never truly found. Marilyn Monroe. Close your eyes. Picture Hollywood glamour. Odds are, you see Marilyn Monroe. Red lips, white dress swirling over a subway grate, laughter that hid 1,000 heartbreaks. No star shines brighter in our collective memory, yet none felt emptier inside. Born Norma Jean Mortensen, Marilyn survived a childhood in foster homes and orphanages. Always the outsider, always longing to be wanted. She married at 16 just to escape, modeled to survive, and caught Hollywood's eye almost by accident. The studio saw her vulnerability and turned it into a lure, marketing her as the ultimate fantasy. Childlike innocence wrapped in sex appeal. They bleached her hair 7 times to achieve that signature blonde, taught her to walk with that famous wiggle, trained her voice to have that breathy quality that became her trademark. Men wanted her. Women wanted to be her. Hollywood wanted to own her. She belonged to the world, except somehow to herself. Behind the scenes, Marilyn fought desperately for control. She formed her own production company, studied with Lee Strasberg, and battled for serious roles. Her performances in Bus Stop and Some Like It Hot revealed the depth of talent Hollywood preferred to ignore. But the machine was too powerful. For every step forward, there were 2 steps back: studio manipulation, typecasting, and the constant, grinding pressure to remain Marilyn Monroe, even as Norma Jean cried out for recognition. Fame gave her power, but took away her peace. Her relationships were car wrecks in slow motion. Joe DiMaggio, Arthur Miller, the Kennedys. She was used, discarded, and left to battle addiction and anxiety alone. Studios dismissed her as difficult, never pausing to wonder why she was always late, always on edge. Behind every iconic photo, there's a woman desperate to be seen, to be taken seriously, to be loved for more than just her image. Why couldn't Marilyn's legend save her? Because Hollywood made her a goddess, but never taught her how to be human. On the night she died, at just 36, the world mourned the loss of a star. But for Marilyn, the tragedy was that in a life of endless spotlight, no one could truly reach her in the dark. Mary Astor. Mary Astor was elegance personified. Her cool composure and smoky voice lighting up films from The Maltese Falcon to Dodsworth. But behind the refined exterior lay a woman fighting for her life and reputation. Astor's biggest scandal didn't happen on a soundstage. It happened in a courtroom, where her private diary was introduced as evidence in a custody battle that gripped the nation. Her journey to Hollywood was smooth. A beauty contest led to silent films, then a successful transition to talkies. Unlike many of her peers, Astor seemed to have found the secret to balancing career and personal fulfillment. She married and had a daughter, crafting what appeared to be a stable life amid Hollywood's chaos. But appearances deceive. Her marriage to Dr. Franklin Thorpe collapsed, leading to a bitter custody battle over their daughter Marilyn. It was then that Thorpe revealed his nuclear option, Mary's private diary, in which she'd written candidly about her affair with playwright George S. Kaufman. The lurid details, much exaggerated by the press, became a national sensation. Newspapers published what they claimed were excerpts, describing Astor's intimate encounters and her comparisons of lovers. The world read about her desires, her heartbreaks, her insecurities. Every secret became headline fodder. Hollywood's shimmering facade was shattered by the ugly truth that its queens were just as vulnerable as anyone else. Maybe even more so, because their pain was public property. Remarkably, Astor survived professionally. The scandal coincided with her role in Dodsworth, where her performance was so compelling that audiences forgave, or at least overlooked, her personal life. She went on to her greatest triumph as Bridget O'Shaughnessy in The Maltese Falcon, creating one of film's most memorable femmes fatales. Astor's career survived, but her trust never fully recovered. She kept acting, often with quiet brilliance, but never again with the unguarded joy of her youth. Later years brought struggles with alcoholism, though she eventually found sobriety and a measure of peace through writing her memoirs. Why couldn't she escape the scandal's shadow? Because in Hollywood, a woman's mistakes are never forgiven, only forgotten when a new scandal comes along. Mary Astor's tragedy is the loss of privacy, the exposure of a soul that only ever wanted to be loved, not just as a character, but as a person. The City of Dreams is also a city of secrets, and for Mary, those secrets would be both her undoing and her strange redemption. Bette Davis. Let's be honest, Bette Davis didn't fit the mold. She wasn't a glamour girl. She was a fighter, a truth-teller, a woman who chewed scenery and studio executives with equal relish. With those unforgettable eyes and that clipped, unmistakable delivery. She refused to be just another pretty face. Yet, even as she racked up Oscars and rewrote the rules for what a leading lady could be, Bette was always fighting a new battle. Against the men who tried to control her, against the gossip that followed her every move, against the years themselves. Davis arrived in Hollywood in 1930, branded too New England and too theatrical. But her fierce talent couldn't be denied. When she finally landed worthy roles in Of Human Bondage and Dangerous, the industry was forced to recognize her genius. She became the first female president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and when Warner Brothers tried to force her into mediocre roles, she sued them, a virtually unheard-of act of defiance that risked everything. She won artistically, but paid personally. Her fight with Warner's blacklisted her briefly, and her determined independence frightened away many in the industry. Her feud with Joan Crawford became the stuff of legend, yet both women suffered the same fate, admired for their strength, but punished for it too. Bette's personal life was littered with heartbreak, divorces, a daughter who turned on her, cancer, and strokes that robbed her of speech, but never her wit. In her later years, Davis faced the cruelest cut of all, Hollywood's indifference to aging women. The industry that once begged for her talent now offered only caricatures and horror roles. Yet she worked on creating memorable performances, even in B-movies like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Her famous newspaper ad, Actress, 60s, Seeks Employment, was both a desperate measure and a damning indictment of an industry that discards its greatest talents when their faces show the years they've lived. Why did a woman so tough still find herself undone by the very system she dominated? Because Hollywood only rewards rebellion when it's profitable. The rest of the time, it grinds down anyone who refuses to play by the rules. Bette Davis did it the hard way, and in the end, the world admired her courage. But the cost was written in loneliness and loss. Carole Lombard. Carole Lombard could make you laugh until you cried, a queen of screwball comedy, sparkling in films like My Man Godfrey and To Be or Not to Be. Off-screen, she was as real as they come, witty, generous, a beacon for her friends in the darkest days of the Depression. Married to Clark Gable, she seemed to have found the rarest thing in Hollywood, true happiness. Unlike many of her contemporaries, Carole arrived in Hollywood with family support and stable footing. Beginning as a Fox contract player after a beauty contest win, she survived a car crash that scarred her face and threatened her career. But rather than surrender, she reinvented herself, leaning into comedy and discovering a natural talent for the rapid-fire dialogue and physical humor that would become her trademark. Lombard stood out in the studio system for her authenticity. She swore like a sailor, treated everyone on set with respect regardless of their position, and negotiated one of the industry's most favorable contracts, giving her unprecedented control over her projects. Her marriage to William Powell ended amicably. They remained friends for life, and her romance with Clark Gable captivated America. They were Hollywood's ideal couple, the king and his queen, living simply on their ranch when not making movies, seemingly untouchable by the industry's usual corrosions. But fate, as always, had other plans. In 1942, at the height of World War II, Carole died in a plane crash while returning from a war bond rally. She was just 33. The country wept. Gable was inconsolable, enlisting in the Army Air Forces shortly after and reportedly requesting dangerous combat missions. Her death was a national tragedy, a reminder that even the brightest lights can be snuffed out in an instant. So why couldn't all that love, all that laughter, protect her? Because in the end, tragedy plays no favorites. Lombard's legacy is joy in the face of sorrow, courage in the face of fear, a spirit that even Hollywood's relentless machine couldn't quite extinguish. Unlike many of our tragic queens, Carole Lombard never lost herself to the system, but the system lost her just the same, leaving us to wonder what might have been. Joan Crawford. Few stars worked harder for the crown than Joan Crawford. Born Lucille Lesueur, she clawed her way out of poverty, transforming herself from a chorus girl into MGM's reigning goddess. Her flinty determination was both her armor and her Achilles heel. Studios exploited her beauty. Gossip columns savaged her ambition. But Joan never stopped fighting. Not for roles, not for respect, not for the love she craved and rarely found. Crawford's legend begins in San Antonio dance halls, where the teenage Lucille performed to escape an abusive home life. Arriving in Hollywood, she endured years of bit parts before her breakthrough in Our Dancing Daughters, where her modern, spirited flapper captured America's imagination. When talkies arrived, many silent stars faded, but not Joan. She hired a voice coach, practiced relentlessly, and emerged stronger than before. Her 1945 Oscar for Mildred Pierce represented not just a performance, but a resurrection. She'd been labeled box office poison just a few years earlier. But that victory was hard-won and fleeting. Her rivalry with Bette Davis lit up the screen and the tabloids. But Joan's real battles were waged at home. Failed marriages, a troubled relationship with her adopted children, and a desperate need to remain camera-ready long after the world had crowned a new generation of starlets. Stories of her perfectionism were legendary. She'd rise at 4 a.m. to begin her beauty regimen, scrubbing her face with ice and soap 70 times each morning. As roles dwindled, Joan took what came, from prestige films to B-horror pictures like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane and Straitjacket. Unlike stars who retreated, Joan remained visible, serving on corporate boards and making public appearances with meticulous attention to her image. The release of her daughter Christina's memoir, Mommy Dearest, would forever stain Joan's legacy, painting her as a monster when all she wanted was to be loved. So why, after all the awards and headlines, did Joan's story end in bitterness and scandal? Because Hollywood never forgives a queen who shows weakness, and never lets a legend age gracefully. Joan Crawford's tragedy is the high price of survival in a kingdom built on dreams, and on the ruin of those who dare to dream them. Frances Farmer. If you want to know how Hollywood treats women who refuse to play along, look no further than Frances Farmer. Beautiful, brilliant, and defiant, she was a star on the rise, until she started speaking her mind. Studios branded her difficult, and the press labeled her crazy. Soon, the machinery that once built her up began tearing her down. Farmer's journey began with promise: a scholarship to study drama in Russia, a Paramount contract, and early success in films like Come and Get It. Critics praised her nuanced performances and luminous screen presence. But Frances harbored ambitions beyond being decorative. She wanted artistic integrity, meaningful roles, and the freedom to express her progressive political views. In an era of carefully managed star images, her blunt honesty about Hollywood's hypocrisy made powerful enemies. The trouble began with small acts of rebellion: refusing publicity stunts, questioning directors about shallow characterizations, battling the studio over loan-outs to B pictures. The press, always hungry for a fallen angel narrative, began portraying her as unstable and difficult. When she was arrested for driving without lights during a wartime blackout and resisted arrest, the studios saw their opportunity. What followed was a cascade of horrors that would have seemed excessive, even in a Gothic novel. Farmer's spiral was rapid and brutal. Psychiatric hospitals, rumored lobotomies, a loss of freedom that would break the strongest heart. Her struggles with mental illness became a public spectacle, her humanity drowned in a sea of headlines and whispers. Committed to various institutions over several years, she endured insulin shock therapy, electroconvulsive treatment, and possibly a transorbital lobotomy. Through the latter remains disputed. By the time she emerged, older and changed, the world had moved on. Why couldn't her spirit save her? Because Hollywood rewards obedience, not courage. and Frances Farmer refused to be obedient. Her tragedy isn't just personal, it's political, a testament to what happens when a woman's voice threatens the story the world wants to hear. The system didn't just discard Frances Farmer, it made an example of her for any other actress who might consider defiance. Doris Day. To the world, Doris Day was the eternal optimist, the girl next door with a smile that could chase away any cloud. Her hits, Que Sera Sera, Pillow Talk, Calamity Jane, were the soundtrack to a sunnier America. But behind the cheerful facade was a woman battered by betrayal, loss, and a string of failed marriages. Day's journey to stardom began with dance, until a car accident at 14 shattered her leg and her ballet dreams. During recovery, she discovered her extraordinary voice and soon became a big band singer, recording hits like Sentimental Journey that comforted troops returning from World War II. Hollywood beckoned with Romance on the High Seas, and audiences instantly fell in love with her wholesome charm and crystalline vocals. As the 1950s unfolded, Day became America's most popular female star, the virgin queen of romantic comedies, perpetually paired with Rock Hudson or James Garner in a world of split-level homes and sexual innuendo that never crossed the line. The studio system cultivated her good girl image so successfully that even Doris felt trapped by it. "I'm not the all-American virgin queen," she once protested. "I'm not the girl next door. I never was." Day's success masked a private life marked by heartbreak, a violent first husband, fortunes lost to crooked managers, and a son nearly caught in the Manson family's web. When she discovered, after her third husband's death, that she was broke and millions in debt, the shock nearly destroyed her. Yet Doris did what she always did. She kept going, rebuilding her life out of the public eye, dedicating herself to animal welfare. Why couldn't that indomitable optimism save her from pain? Because Hollywood's brightest smiles often hide the deepest wounds. The industry that packaged her as sunshine personified never allowed her the full range of human emotion. Not on screen, and certainly not in public. Doris Day's tragedy is the cost of always being the sunshine girl, even when the storm clouds refuse to break. Lupe Velez. Lupe Velez was a force of nature, vibrant, passionate, and impossible to ignore. As the Mexican Spitfire, she broke barriers for Latina actresses in Hollywood, but paid a heavy price for her independence and tempestuous heart. Born in San Luis Potosí, Mexico, Maria Guadalupe Villalobos Velez fled the Mexican Revolution to try her luck in vaudeville before Hollywood discovered her exotic beauty and explosive energy. Famed director D.W. Griffith cast her opposite Douglas Fairbanks in The Gaucho, launching a career defined by fiery romantic comedies and equally fiery personal feuds. In an era when Latina actresses were largely confined to maid roles or exoticized bit parts, Lupe headlined her own series of Mexican Spitfire films, becoming one of the first Hispanic movie stars with significant box office draw. Her volatile temperament, throwing tantrums on set, engaging in public quarrels with lovers, became her calling card. The press couldn't get enough of her affairs with Gary Cooper, John Gilbert, and most notoriously, Johnny Weissmuller, whom she married and divorced in a relationship marked by mutual violence and passion. Each headline reinforced the stereotype of the hot-blooded Latina, an image Lupe both resented and played to when it suited her professional needs. Her career was marked by triumphs and tabloid disasters, headline romances, fiery confrontations, and a public eager to watch her every misstep. When her final relationship ended in scandal and an unplanned pregnancy, Lupe saw no way out. She died by suicide at 36, her final act feeding a myth the studios could spin one last time. Even her death became Hollywood legend, with fabricated stories about her being found with her head in a toilet, a cruel fiction that persisted for decades. Why couldn't she overcome the forces aligned against her? Because for women like Lupe, Hollywood offered only two options: burn bright or burn out. The industry that profited from her exotic appeal never allowed her to transcend the narrow confines of ethnic stereotyping, and the press that built her legend was equally eager to tear it down. Her story is a reminder that to survive as a woman of color in the Golden Age meant living with the constant threat of erasure. Peg Entwistle. No legend haunts Hollywood quite like Peg Entwistle. In 1932, she climbed the H of the Hollywoodland sign and leapt to her death, a final, desperate act from a young actress whose dreams had been ground down by the industry's indifference. Born in Wales and raised in New York after her mother's death, Peg found early success on Broadway, earning praise from critics and fellow actors like Bette Davis, who cited Entwistle as an inspiration. She appeared in 10 Broadway productions before the Great Depression decimated theater revenues, forcing her west to try her luck in the talkies. Hollywood, however, proved less welcoming than the New York stage. Despite her beauty and proven talent, Peg struggled to break through. Her sole film appearance, in 13 Women, ended with most of her scenes left on the cutting room floor. As her savings dwindled and her prospects dimmed, she lived with her uncle in a bungalow on Beechwood Drive, directly in the shadow of the Hollywoodland sign that then adorned the hills, a daily reminder of the dream slipping through her fingers. On September 16, 1932, Peg told her uncle she was meeting friends at a drugstore. Instead, she hiked up the rugged terrain to the sign, climbed a workman's ladder to the top of the 50-foot-tall letter H, and jumped. A hiker found her body the next day, along with a suicide note. "I am afraid I am a coward. I am sorry for everything. If I had done this a long time ago, it would have saved a lot of pain." P.E. Peg was talented and hopeful, but luck never favored her. Her roles dwindled, her money ran out, and the world turned away. Her suicide became a symbol of broken dreams, the cost of believing too fiercely in a city that promises everything but guarantees nothing. Why couldn't Peg find another path? Because in Hollywood, hope is both a blessing and curse. For every star who makes it, 1,000 fade away in silence. Peg's story endures as a whisper on the wind, a warning, and a plea for kindness to those still chasing the light. Barbara Payton. Barbara Payton had the kind of beauty that stops traffic, and the self-destructive streak that stops careers. She burst onto the scene in the late 40s, a knockout blonde with a tough girl edge. Hollywood saw in her a new Jean Harlow, but Barbara's path was rockier from the start. Affairs with married men, barroom brawls, and a taste for danger that kept the gossip columns busy. Growing up in Minnesota, Barbara Lee Redfield dreamed of escape. By 17, she'd married and had a son. By 20, she'd left both behind for Hollywood. Her stunning looks quickly attracted attention, leading to a contract with Universal and roles in films like Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye with James Cagney. But Barbara's real talent seemed to be generating off-screen drama. Her torrid affair with married actor Franchot Tone became tabloid gold when she simultaneously dated tough guy actor Tom Neal, leading to a violent brawl between the men that left Tone hospitalized with a fractured cheekbone and brain concussion. The scandal should have ended her career, but Barbara briefly rebounded, starring in Bride of the Gorilla and marrying Tone after his recovery. The marriage lasted 53 days. What followed was a spectacular downward spiral: broken contracts, drunken appearances, and increasingly desperate attempts to remain relevant. By the mid-1950s, Barbara was appearing in bottom-of-the-barrel productions like Murder Is My Beat and The Flanagan Boy. Her career imploded almost as quickly as it began. Addiction, abuse, and scandal left her broke and alone. By her early 30s, Barbara was a fixture in the tabloids, for all the wrong reasons. Los Angeles police arrested her for public drunkenness and prostitution. Her autobiography, I Am Not Ashamed, revealed a woman who had lost everything except her defiance. She died at 39, her final years spent in poverty and regret. her once bright future lost to the same forces that once crowned her a queen. Why couldn't she climb out? Because Hollywood's ladder is easy to fall from and nearly impossible to climb again, especially for women. The industry that exploited her beauty had no use for her, once that beauty was marred by age and hard living. Barbara Payton's tragedy is the tragedy of second chances denied, and a world more interested in watching women fall than seeing them rise again. Veronica Lake. Veronica Lake was more than just a hairstyle. Her peekaboo bang became a wartime craze. Her screen presence was icy, mysterious, unforgettable. But Lake's real life was anything but glamorous. Plagued by alcoholism, mental health struggles, and a career that fizzled as quickly as it caught fire, Veronica found herself broke and working as a barmaid, nearly unrecognizable from the femme fatale who once captivated millions. Born Constance Ockelman in Brooklyn, the future Veronica Lake arrived in Hollywood as a teenager. Her breakthrough came as a supporting player in I Wanted Wings, where her distinctive hair, falling over one eye in what would become her trademark peekaboo style, caused a sensation. Overnight, women across America copied the look, much to the frustration of factory managers during the war effort, who feared the style would cause industrial accidents. Paired with Alan Ladd in film noir classics like This Gun for Hire and The Blue Dahlia, Lake created a screen persona that was uniquely her own. Petite, coolly sensual, and carrying an air of mystery that audiences found irresistible. But behind the carefully constructed image was a deeply troubled woman. Diagnosed with schizophrenia and known for volatile behavior on set, Lake slowly gained a reputation for being difficult. When Paramount dropped her contract in 1948, few other studios were willing to take the risk. As roles dried up, alcohol took over. Her iconic blonde hair fell out in clumps due to malnutrition and stress. By the 1960s, reporters found her working as a waitress and barmaid, though she occasionally surfaced for low-budget horror films or exploitative "Where Are They Now" interviews. A brief, unsuccessful comeback attempt with a small role in Footsteps in the Snow led nowhere. She died at 50, her final years spent in obscurity. Why couldn't fame and fortune save her? Because Hollywood is always looking for the next big thing, and when the spotlight shifts, yesterday's queen is left alone in the dark. Veronica's story is a warning. Beauty and fame can open any door, except the ones that matter most. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey through Hollywood's golden tragedies. If these stories moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more untold legends and secrets from the silver screen. Your support helps keep the spotlight on the real stories behind the stars. Until next time, keep dreaming and keep questioning the price of fame.